The vintage Cabernet swirled in my glass, a deep crimson that mirrored the fury simmering beneath my skin. I watched, as if through a distorted lens, the slow, deliberate formation of Alistair Vance's words. My nails, manicured to perfection, bit crescent deep into my palms, grounding me as the opulent dining room spun. His voice, somehow both distant and agonizingly precise, sliced through the murmuring hum of polite society. "My son, Julian," Alistair announced, his gaze sweeping across the hushed assembly, "deserves better than someone from the gutter. Street refuse, in a dress Julian undoubtedly chose, pretending to belong in our world. 23 pairs of eyes, a tableau of the city's elite, country club friends, business associates, and his now frozen family members, swiveled between Alistair and me. They waited, rapt, to see if the nobody dating the prince would dare defy the king. Each beat of my heart throbbed in my throat. I lowered my gaze, carefully, meticulously folding the linen napkin, fabric that likely cost more than my first apartment's rent, and placed it beside my untouched plate of overpriced salmon. Then I stood, slowly, deliberately. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. Vance," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the thick silence. "And thank you for finally being honest about how you feel." My eyes met his, unblinking. "My name is Alara Thorne. I'm 32, and a self-made entrepreneur." A faint, knowing smile touched my lips. "This, Mr. Vance, is the story of how I transformed a public humiliation into the most expensive lesson a man ever learned." "Alara, don't!" Julian pleaded, his hand closing around mine, a desperate anchor. I squeezed his fingers gently, a silent promise, then released them. "It's fine, love. Your father's right. I should know my place." Alistair's smirk was a masterpiece of self-satisfaction, a smug triumph etched on his face. The expression of a man who believed he had won, who had finally driven away the street rat who dared to taint his precious son. If only he knew. I walked out of that suffocating dining room with my head held high. Past the authentic Monet in the hallway, its vibrant colors a stark contrast to the monochrome fear in the servant's downcast eyes. Past the gleaming Bentley in the driveway, the one Alistair had made sure to mention cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. I swept through the marble foyer and out to the circular driveway where my car waited. Julian caught up to me by my sensible sedan, the one Alistair had sneered at when I'd pulled up. Tears streamed down his face, blurring the soft city lights. "I'm so sorry, Alara. I had no idea he would." I pulled him close, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne, now mingled with the salt of his tears. "This isn't your fault. I'll talk to him. Make him apologize," he insisted, desperation in his voice. "No." I tucked a strand of his dark hair behind his ear. "No more apologizing for him. No more making excuses. He said what he's been thinking for the past year. At least now we know where we stand. Alara, please don't let him ruin us." I kissed his forehead, tasting the salt. "He can't ruin what's real. Julian, I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" He nodded reluctantly, his grip on my hand lingering until the last possible moment. I drove away from the Vance estate, watching in my rearview mirror as the sprawling mansion grew smaller, its lights twinkling like the unreachable stars of a forgotten dream. My phone began to buzz before I even hit the main road. I ignored it, knowing it was likely Julian's mother, Sylvia, trying to smooth things over, or his sister, Genevieve, offering awkward solidarity. They weren't bad people, just weak ones, too afraid of Alistair to ever truly stand up to him. But I had more important calls to make. "Harper," I voice-dialed my assistant as I merged onto the highway. "I know it's late. Miss Thorne, is everything all right?" Harper had been with me for 6 years, since before the world knew who Alara Thorne truly was. She could read my moods like a book. Cancel the Vance Industries merger. A beat of stunned silence. Then, a sharp intake of breath. "Ma'am, we're supposed to sign papers on Monday. The due diligence is complete. Financing is secured. I'm aware. Kill it. The termination fees alone will be—" "I don't care about the fees. Send the notice to their legal team tonight. Cite irreconcilable differences in corporate culture and vision." "Alara!" Harper dropped the formalities, a rare occurrence reserved for moments she believed I was making a grave mistake. "This is a $2 billion deal. Whatever happened at dinner? He called me garbage, Harper, in front of a room full of people. Made it abundantly clear that someone like me will never be good enough for his family. Or, by extension, his business. That bastard, Harper muttered, her fingers already flying across her keyboard, the rapid-fire clicks audible through the phone. I'll have legal draw up the termination papers within the hour. Want me to leak it to the financial press? Not yet. Let him wake up to the official notice first. We'll let the media have it by noon tomorrow. With pleasure, ma'am. Anything else? I thought for a moment, picturing Alistair Vance's self-satisfied face. Yes. Set up a meeting with Sterling Corporation for Monday. If Vance Industries won't sell, maybe their biggest competitor will. You're going to buy his rival instead? Why not? Garbage has to stick together, right? I hung up, a cold, vengeful satisfaction settling in my chest. The rest of the drive to my penthouse was spent in silence. The city lights blurred past, each one a luminous testament to how far I'd come from the kid who'd slept in shelters and survived on free school lunches. Alistair Vance thought he knew me. He thought he'd researched enough to understand what kind of woman was dating his son. He knew I'd grown up poor, that I'd started working at 14, that I'd put myself through community college and then university through sheer determination and an unhealthy amount of caffeine. What he didn't know was that the scrappy kid he looked down on had built a corporate empire while staying deep in the shadows. He didn't know that Thorne Technologies, the very company his firm was desperately trying to merge with to stay relevant in the rapidly evolving tech age, was mine. I had spent the last decade quietly acquiring patents, poaching top talent, and strategically positioning myself to become the silent kingmaker in our industry. He didn't know because I'd kept it quiet, using layers of holding companies and trusted executives as the public face of my operations. I'd learned early that real power came from being underestimated, from letting blowhards like Alistair think they held all the cards. As I pulled into my building's private garage, my phone lit up with an incoming call. Randall Hayes, Vance CFO. That was faster than expected. Randall had my personal number from our previous merger discussions for urgent matters. Ilara, it's Randall. I'm sorry to call so late, but we just received a notice from Thorne Technologies terminating the merger agreement. There must be some mistake. His voice was laced with panic. No mistake, Randall. But we're set to sign Monday. The board has already approved. Shareholders are expecting. Then the board should have thought about that before their CEO publicly humiliated me at dinner tonight. Silence. Then, a quiet, almost fearful whisper. What did Alistair do? Ask him yourself, Randall. I'm sure he'll give you his version. Good night. I hung up and headed to my penthouse, pouring myself a single malt scotch. I settled onto the balcony, watching the city's pulse slow to a gentle hum. Somewhere out there, Alistair Vance was about to have his evening utterly ruined. I wondered if he'd make the connection immediately, or if it would take him a while to realize that the garbage he dismissed controlled the one thing his company needed to survive the next fiscal year. My phone buzzed. Julian calling. I let it go to voicemail, not trusting myself to separate my cold anger at his father from my deep affection for him. He didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire, but some battles I knew couldn't be avoided. By morning, my phone had logged 47 missed calls. Alistair had tried reaching me 6 times himself, a fact that must have been killing him. The great Alistair Vance, reduced to repeatedly calling someone he had declared garbage. I was reviewing quarterly reports over breakfast when Harper called. The financial press got wind of the terminated merger, she announced, a hint of glee in her voice. Bloomberg wants a statement. Tell them Thorne Technologies has decided to explore other opportunities that better align with our values and vision for the future. Vague and devastating. I love it, she purred. Also, Alistair Vance is in the lobby. I nearly spit out my coffee. He's here. Showed up 20 minutes ago. Security won't let him up without your approval, but he's making quite a scene. Should I have him removed? No, I said, setting down my mug. Send him up, but make him wait in conference room C. For, say, 30 minutes. Tell him I'm finishing breakfast. You're evil, she giggled. I'll prep conference room C, the one with the uncomfortable chairs. 45 minutes later, I walked into conference room, see to find Alistair Vance looking significantly less imposing than he had the night before. His usually immaculate hair was disheveled, his tailored suit rumpled. The man who'd lorded over dinner like a king now looked exactly what he was, a desperate CEO watching his company's future evaporate. Ilara! He stood as I entered, and I could see the effort it cost him. Thank you for seeing me. I sat down without offering a handshake, crossing my legs. You have 5 minutes. He swallowed, his pride tasting like broken glass. I apologize for last night. My words were inappropriate. Inappropriate! I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You called me garbage in front of your entire social circle. You humiliated me in your own home, at your own table, while I was there as your guest and your son's girlfriend. I was drunk. No. I cut him off, my voice steely. You were honest. Drunk words, sober thoughts. You thought I was beneath you from the moment Julian introduced us last year. You just finally said it out loud. Alistair's jaw tightened. Even now, even desperate, he couldn't fully hide his disdain. What do you want? An apology? You have it. A public statement? I'll make one. Just, the merger needs to happen. You know it does. Why? I leaned forward slightly. Excuse me. Why does it need to happen? Explain to me why I should do business with someone who fundamentally disrespects me. Alistair's face flushed. Because it's business. It's not personal. Everything is personal when you make it personal. I stood, walking to the panoramic window, gesturing at the glittering cityscape below. You researched me, right? Dug into my background. Found out about the foster homes, the free lunch programs, the night shifts at warehouses to pay for textbooks. He nodded reluctantly, his gaze fixed on my profile. But you stop there, I continued, turning back to him. You saw where I came from and assumed that defined me. You never looked at where I was going. Do you know why Thorn Technologies is successful, Alistair? Because you have good products, he mumbled. Because I remember being hungry. Because I remember being dismissed, overlooked, underestimated. Every person we hire, every deal we make, every product we develop, I ask myself if we're creating opportunity or just protecting privilege. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a near whisper, yet filled with an undeniable power. Your company represents everything I built mine to fight against. Old money protecting old ideas, keeping the door closed to anyone who didn't inherit their seat at the table. That's not, isn't it? Name one person on your board who didn't go to an Ivy League school. One executive who grew up below the poverty line. One senior manager who had to work 3 jobs to put themselves through community college. His silence was answer enough. The merger is dead, Alistair. Not because you insulted me, but because you showed me who you really are. And more importantly, you showed me who your company really is. I headed for the door. This will destroy us, he said quietly, a plea in his voice. Without this merger, Vance Industries won't survive the next 2 years. Then maybe it shouldn't. I paused at the threshold. Maybe it's time for the old guard to make way for companies that judge people by their potential, not their pedigree. Wait! He stood so fast his chair tipped over with a clatter. What about Julian? You're going to destroy his father's company, his inheritance. I turned back, a ghost of a smile on my face. Julian is brilliant, talented, and capable. He doesn't need to inherit success. He can build his own. That's the difference between us, Alistair. You see inheritance as destiny. I see it as a crutch. He'll never forgive you. Maybe not, but at least he'll know I have principles that can't be bought or intimidated away. Can you say the same? I left him there, alone amidst the uncomfortable chairs and the echoing silence, and returned to my office. Harper was waiting with a stack of messages and a knowing look. Sterling Corporation wants to meet Monday morning. They're very interested in discussing an acquisition. Good. Make sure Alistair hears about it by this afternoon. Already arranged for the information to leak. She paused, then added, Julian is in your private office. My heart skipped. How long? About an hour. I brought him coffee and tissues. How did he know to come here? I asked. He called the office main line asking for you. When I told him you were in a meeting with his father, he asked if he could wait. Given the circumstances, I thought you wouldn't mind. I nodded, the corner of my mouth twitching upwards. After leaving Alistair in the conference room to stew, I walked into my private office. Julian was curled up in my desk chair, eyes red but dry, his normally impeccable appearance slightly rumpled. He looked up when I entered, and in his face, I saw his father's strength, but also his mother's kindness. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi. I heard what you told him." He gestured vaguely. "Harper let me watch on the conference room feed." I sat on the edge of my desk. "And?" He stood, coming to stand between my knees, taking my hands in his. "And I think I've been a coward, Alara. Letting him treat you that way, making excuses, hoping it would get better." "Julian, no. Let me finish." His grip tightened gently. "I've spent my whole life benefiting from his prejudices without challenging them. Last night, watching him, I was ashamed. Not of me. No, not of you. Of him. And of myself, for not standing up to him sooner." He looked into my eyes, his own shining with a new resolve. "What I'm saying is, if you'll have me, I want to build something new with you. Without my family's money or connections or conditional approval." I pulled him close, burying my face in his shoulder. "Are you sure? He's right about one thing, love. Walking away from that inheritance is no small thing." He laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in days. "Ilara Thorne, you just terminated a $2 billion merger because my father disrespected you. I think we'll figure out the money part." "I love you," I said, meaning it more than ever. "I love you too, even if you did just declare corporate war on my father." "Especially because I declared corporate war on your father," I corrected softly. "Especially because of that," he agreed, and then he kissed me. My phone buzzed. "Harper again." "Ma'am, Alistair Vance is holding an emergency board meeting. Our sources say they're discussing reaching out to you directly over his head." I put the phone on speaker. "Tell them Thorne Technologies might be willing to discuss a merger with Vance Industries under new leadership. Emphasis on new." Julian's eyes widened. "You're going to oust my father from his own company?" "I'm going to give the board a choice. Evolve or perish. What they do with that choice is up to them." He thought about it for a moment, then nodded slowly. "He won't go quietly. I wouldn't expect him to. This is going to get ugly. Probably. My mother will cry. Definitely. My sister will write another terrible song about family drama. God help us all." I smiled, and it was sharp and beautiful, and a little bit dangerous. "So when do we start?" He smiled back, a mirroring glint in his eyes. "How about now?" And that's how the woman Alistair Vance called garbage became the architect of change, a queen who toppled an entrenched kingdom. Not with a sword or an army, but with a simple, undeniable truth. Respect isn't inherited. It's earned. And those who refuse to give it when it's earned, well, they learn the hard way that sometimes the garbage takes itself out and takes everything else with it. By the following Monday, Alistair Vance was no longer CEO of Vance Industries. By Tuesday, Thorne Technologies had announced a merger with the newly restructured company. By Wednesday, Julian had accepted a position as our new head of strategic development, turning down his father's spiteful offer to fund a rival venture. And by Thursday, Alistair Vance had learned the most expensive lesson of his life. Never call someone garbage unless you're prepared to be thrown out with it. 6 months later, Julian and I were engaged, with plans for a small, private ceremony far away from his father's social circle. Alistair hadn't spoken to either of us since his removal as CEO. But Julian's mother, Sylvia, called weekly, slowly rebuilding their relationship on new, more honest terms.